Should Oklahoma be favored to win the remainder of their schedule? Should they not? Oklahoma's coming out of bye week. What's Brent Venables' record as an assistant look like? We'll talk about that. And why in the world are people writing headlines about Brent Venables' buyout? All that on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Sling TV. Don't miss this week's matchup between Oklahoma and Iowa State right on Sling. Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. He's Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. Josh, we got a football game coming up this Saturday.
We do. That's great. Yeah, out of the bye week, it was fun. We got to really delve into the full college football slate, but enough of that nonsense, right? Let's have a weekend with some more Sooner football. And what do you make of some of the numbers that I'll, give proper credit where credit's due to all Sooners and Hoove and those guys over there that kind of did the digging on what Oklahoma's coming out of the bye week records have looked like under Bob Stoops and under Lincoln Riley, and now obviously with an assistant coach in Brent Venables. The track record, I want to say off the top of my head, Venables' numbers were 23-7, 23 wins against 7 losses coming out of the bye week. So he's been really, really good. Now, part of that is, guess what? Started out at Oklahoma, right? And went to a place like Clemson and turned it into a national power. A little bit different as a head coach. But how much are you putting into that idea this week that, okay, this is one more indication of how well or how poorly this is going to ultimately long-term go with Brent Venables, the way that Oklahoma plays coming out of this bye week?
Well, I think it matters. I think the reason it matters is because it shows that you can keep your team locked in, but not kind of peaking too soon. You can keep them locked into like, hey, we got to keep working. We got to keep pushing ahead and stay kind of ahead of schedule on your preparation a little bit. You don't want to start too early because you don't want to get guys overthinking what they're going to be facing this Saturday when they do face Hunter Deckers and Matt Campbell and the Iowa State Cyclones. But the numbers were Venables as an assistant over the last 23 years, 27-4. 15-3 with Oklahoma, 12-1 with Clemson. Again, he's not the head coach, so that there is a difference. When you're the head coach, you are in charge of all of it, and setting the schedule, prioritizing what you're going to be working on during the bye week ahead of your game planning week that next week. But having a front row seat to the Bob Stoops experience and the Dabo Swinney experience, it does matter. I thought the contrast was very interesting that John Hoover and the guys over at All Sooners on SI brought up, is that Lincoln Riley during his time with Oklahoma, he was just 4-3 coming out of a bye during the regular season. So I think there's a very significant contrast on that front. When Brent Venables left Oklahoma and went to Clemson from 2009 to 2014, Bob Stoops' Oklahoma Sooners were 5-6 coming out of the bye. So Venables was still there for a couple of those years during that stretch. But he's got a long track record, or he's been on teams that have long track records of playing really, really well coming out of a bye. And I think that does track, that translates. If you're a good team coming out of a bye, generally you stay a good team coming out of a bye. Does that necessarily mean you're going to win every game? No. I mean, Bob Stoops had some losses. Dabo had a loss, but it means that you're going to be well prepared and you're going to play well. And I think that's key. I mean, I feel like, just this past week, we saw what West Virginia did with 9 days to prepare for Texas Tech, and they fell flat. Like, it's really important being able to find the right rhythm as a football program and as a coaching staff to putting your team through the paces. If they're able to kind of find that. We'll see what this team looks like when they play Iowa State this Saturday. But I think it's one of those things that if you're a good team coming out of a bye, you kind of stay a good team coming out of a bye. It's not an up and down experience. I mean, it was for Lincoln Riley a little bit, but I mean, generally, guys who have their teams well prepared, I'd be really interested to see, and they don't have the numbers there, but maybe I'll have to look into it another time. But what the defense looked like coming out of a bye under Brent Venables, because I think that's the thing that translates more to just being able to know how to prepare your team.
Yeah, the numbers maybe before the bye and then after the bye defensively throughout Brent Venables' career. That would be, it'd be a deeper dive, but it would be interesting to know that what those numbers look like. 27-4, not all bad, right? Coming out of the bye week, as you mentioned, I had that 23 number mixed up because that's his number of years as an assistant coach. But Bob Stoops, largely, as you mentioned, very, very good coming out of a bye week, which, is it the end all be all for a head coach? I don't think so, right? I wouldn't look at Lincoln Riley's mediocre 4-3 mark coming out of a bye week and say Lincoln Riley's not one of the best coaches in America. I do think Lincoln Riley is one of the best coaches in America. That just happens to be, for him, one of those statistics that's not good, right? Or at least shows that there's, some fallacy somewhere with some of what he's doing, or it's just one of those, bad trends to start for him, right? Like you mentioned, Bob Stoops had that 5-6 stretch after bye weeks from 2009 to 2014, though Bob Stoops again was 21-7 overall coming out of a bye week. So I don't know. It's probably maybe putting too much into things, but you'd like to win the game coming out of your first bye week as a head coach, right? And there are examples. The first name that really comes to mind for me, and maybe this is just being a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and you see it every year, but Andy Reid, really, really good coming out of a bye week historically in his career, not just in Kansas City, but with the Philadelphia Eagles as well. I don't know what Bill Belichick's numbers are coming out of a bye week, but I'm going to guess Bill Belichick's numbers coming out of a bye week, pretty doggone good. And Nick Saban, if you want to not make it an NFL football conversation, probably you could do the same thing with Nick Saban and the most successful college football coaches. So again, is it the end all be all for whether or not you are a great head football coach or one of them or are going to be one of the top head football coaches? No, I'm not ready to go there, John. But again, you'd rather start 1-0 in that regard versus 0-1. Are you muted?
I am very muted. My apologies, everybody. Doing some little research on the fly and forgot that I was muted. But what I was finding was that Bill Belichick was 8-6 coming out of a bye with New England. Andy Reid, like you mentioned, with Philadelphia, was very good coming out of a bye. And same, he's 8-5 with Kansas City. So it translates. Mike McCarthy with Green Bay, 10-2 coming out of a bye, with the Dallas Cowboys so far 2-0 coming out of a bye. So if you're pretty good coming out of a bye, I think that means you just have a good feel for your team and you know what buttons to push during the rest week. And I think that's the key. This is the bye week is a great time to kind of regroup, rejuvenate the squad, find some refreshment a little bit, but also stay locked in and figuring out a way to combine all of that. And I think that's going to be the thing that'll stand out about Brent Venables, is because he's so culture minded, so culture oriented, relationships oriented, and really player driven, player focused. I feel like he's going to have a good feel for what they needed to do during the bye week to stay in the zone, stay focused, stay engaged with their preparation without necessarily looking ahead to Iowa State. Because I think generally teams don't start their game prep until that week when it's actually Iowa State week. And so how to manage the bye week without kind of creating this emotional, mental letdown. And then you have to ramp back up during the game week, keeping them focused and engaged throughout that week. So I think that's going to be the thing that's going to be intriguing about this. And I'll say, after the 3 losses, I felt like they came back with really good energy against Kansas. they looked like sharp for the most part. There weren't really busts in coverage, on defense. The offense looked really, really good. So I feel pretty positive that when they roll up to Ames on Saturday against a really good Iowa State defense, that they're going to be, I would say, in the zone. They'll be focused. They'll have good energy. Again, it's going to be a good defense that they're going to play. So we'll see how it all translates to the field and if the offense is able to move the ball and put points up. But I think the defense will come out and improve a little bit upon what they did against Kansas. So I'm encouraged, and I think that's going to bode well for the Oklahoma Sooners. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about Brent Venables, and people are looking into his contract. We got some contract details that were released by The Athletic, but people are writing some alternative headlines with those details that we're going to talk about that. But first, let me talk to you about SimpliSafe. If I can find it. There it is. So SimpliSafe, if you're looking to up your home security, SimpliSafe is the place to be. As everyone knows, athletes rise and fall in the ranks, but when it comes to saving money, SimpliSafe always stays on top. And right now you can save big with SimpliSafe Home Security. They're giving listeners 40% off their advanced security system. SimpliSafe was just named the best home security of 2022 by US News. I know people that use it, they love it. And we think you'll love it too, because at SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. With 24/7 professional monitoring, when a threat is detected, SimpliSafe's monitoring professionals promptly contact you and dispatch first responders to your home, even if you're away or unable to respond. SimpliSafe blankets your home with protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect motion or instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Their monitoring experts use proprietary response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. So don't miss the chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off your order when you visit simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege today. Again, that's simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege today to customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes. Again, that's simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege today. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. For your second listen today, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast with our guy, Peter Bukowski. From the games that mattered the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Again, Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, Josh, contract details came out, but that's not the part of any of this that matters. Brent Venables is going to be with the Oklahoma Sooners for several years. I think many people, the ones that are even, I would say, pessimistic about the way that this season is going, still feel pretty confident about Brent Venables and his ability to create a really strong program at the University of Oklahoma. So what we're seeing, though, is people begin to talk about the buyout numbers with Brent Venables. He's got a fully guaranteed contract with the Oklahoma Sooners for the next 6 years. But after a 4-3 start, it's created some questions about the longevity. Should people be concerned, Josh? I don't think they should.
Well, I think so. I'm looking at this Outkick headline here. Brent Venables' buyout details make it almost impossible for Oklahoma to fire him. That's one, right? This is from Saturday Down South now. Brent Venables' buyout contract details revealed in report. This is from The Athletic. Oklahoma's Brent Venables owed full contract amount if fired without cause. I mean, that's 3 different national entities that are taking that. This is what happens if Brent Venables gets fired approach, which, look, Oklahoma is, depending upon how the rest of this season plays out, may be headed for its worst season in a long, long time, but they haven't gotten to that point yet, right? I mean, the 3-game losing streak for Oklahoma, John, is now over. And for OU, the hope is that really Dylan Gabriel back alone is enough to perhaps turn this compass back in the direction to where Oklahoma can win all 5 of these games or win 4 of these 5 games, right? Even 3 out of these 5 games, which I think is incredibly doable for Oklahoma, get you to 7-5. Is that a great start? Absolutely not. Is that a 6-6 or 5-7 start? No, it's not. And it's quite a bit different. And it's a long ways off from the, hey, what does Brent Venables buyout conversation look like? What we did learn, though, is that, again, it's fully guaranteed, which, I mean, I don't know why that's nobody should be shocked by that. If Brent Venables' contract wasn't fully guaranteed, then Brent Venables should turn around and fire his agent immediately.
Yeah, show me the college football contract for a head coach at a blue blood program or a premier college football program that isn't 100% guaranteed, and I'd be shocked. Like, I'm pretty sure Dan Lanning up at Oregon's probably got a fully guaranteed contract. Mario Cristobal down at Miami's probably got a fully guaranteed contract. That's just kind of the way that those things work. Some of these other coaches, they have more, buyout options, but Brent Venables doesn't have that. He's got a fully guaranteed deal. And I think that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with having your head coach fully guaranteed because you have confidence in that guy to create a football program that's going to be one of the best in the country. And despite the losses that have happened this year, I think I'm still really confident that that's going to occur. I'm still a big time believer in Brent Venables and what he's going to be able to do, especially on the defensive side of the football. And for as long as you've got Jeff Lebby coaching the offensive side of the football, you're going to be really, really good as a football team. And I think it's all going to come together. It may not come together this season. It may not come together even next season, but I would say by the third year of the Brent Venables era in 2024, we start to see this thing coalesce and put this team back on the national title landscape. And so this idea that we need to be concerned about what it would take to fire Brent Venables 7 games into his tenure at the University of Oklahoma is a pretty laughable idea. And to use it as a headline is also incredibly irresponsible. I'm just going to say it that way. I hate to use that, but it's just out there to, I don't know, kind of generate emotion, generate fervor. And Oklahoma fans, we're good at responding and reacting to emotion. But I mean, it's true. That's what it would take. I mean, those are true statements that they're making, but to use them 7 games into his tenure isn't great. Now, I know probably we did the same thing with Steve Sarkisian last year, after a 5-7 season. But again, it's just one season. If you're calling for a head coach to be fired after 1 year, he'd have to do something pretty egregious as a coach, not football related, to be ousted after 1 year. And I think that's what it comes down to is like, there's nothing that Brent Venables is going to do that's going to cause you to think, okay, we got to get rid of him now. Like after 1 year, it's kind of laughable.
Well, the Steve Sarkisian angle to it, Texas is, and this is in some ways a negative comment on Texas and its boosters and its fan base, and in some ways a positive compliment on Texas's boosters and fan base. John, they are just wealthy enough and just crazy enough to where talking about Steve Sarkisian potentially getting fired and bought out after 1 year, after 1 5-7 season, wasn't that nuts with Texas, right? That's Texas. Oklahoma's a different story. Everybody knows Brent Venables could finish with 4 wins this season. He's not getting fired at Oklahoma. He's coming back for a second season. So that part of it, when you talk about it's a little irresponsible, yeah, it's irresponsible because, Steve Sarkisian, not a Texas guy, right? When you think about your Scott Frost of the world and now Brent Venables here at Oklahoma, you've got guys that they're a part of the history of the program. So it's not as quick to just turn around dispatch of somebody like that and fire them immediately. Whereas Steve Sarkisian obviously comes into Texas and he doesn't have that storied history with the program that a Scott Frost or a Brent Venables respectively had at either Nebraska or Venables obviously has at Oklahoma. So interesting, an interesting angle that the national media is taking there. The hope for Sooner fans is, honestly what they put the final sentence on this Outkick story, which is basically Sooner fans, you better hope that he turns it around because he's just not going to get fired anytime in the future. Again, accurate statement, and I think everybody's on board with that. Let's hope he does get this thing turned around, and so far so good with 1 game versus Kansas.
Yeah, and I don't foresee him getting fired. That's just me, and maybe that's optimism, and that's me drinking the Crimson Kool-Aid. I'm not sure, but I still am a big believer in Brent Venables, and I think we're not only going to see him be the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners for the entirety of this contract, but I'm going to bet by year 5, we've got a contract extension that we're tacking 5 more years onto this deal that goes beyond the current deal. So I'm not at all concerned. It's going to get turned around. 4-3. It's not great for year 1, but it's just year 1. And Brent Venables, I'll keep going back to it. In the summertime, he warned us that Clemson's defense did not turn into Clemson's defense right away either. It might take a year or 2 to get Oklahoma's defense to the height of what we're hoping and expecting it to be. So next, we're going to talk about what should Oklahoma be projected to win over the next 5 games. Should they be favored in any of those 5 games? We've got some more interesting info on that coming up after this.
That's right. We will be projecting wins for Oklahoma. And speaking of projecting wins, how can you get that accomplished? How about LinkedIn Talent Solutions, where they're going to help you win on every new potential hire? That's right. You know that those potential hires, they feel like a high stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100%. Not that 55, not that 95% certain. You want to be 100% certain that you've got access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs, it helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You just hop on over there. You add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. They've got simple tools, screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses, they do what? Well, they rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, again, it's going to help you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So before we dive into these percentages, well, okay, I guess maybe it's better that we just share the percentages that all Sooners put out there, and then I guess we can agree or disagree and dissect and react. The short way of saying this is all Sooners and John Hoover kind of likes Oklahoma to win 4 of its final 5 games, which, John, I don't know that everywhere you look that would be the case for Oklahoma. I feel like that, I don't know that that's the most likely scenario for Oklahoma, but I do think it's one of the 2 most likely scenarios for Oklahoma, which is Oklahoma either wins 3 or 4 of its remaining 5. I don't think they're winning all of them, but I definitely don't think they're going to finish with a losing record over these 5 games. So I don't know. I can definitely see this scenario happening.
Yeah, I'm of the more optimistic mindset there too. Is I do see them capable of winning every single game, especially if Dylan Gabriel is healthy and they're humming on offense like they were against Kansas. I do think the defensive, opponents are going to be more difficult over the final 5 games than they were against Kansas. Iowa State's the best defense in the Big 12. Baylor, I mean, they're up and down, but they still got some really strong defensive talent and a really good defensive mind in Dave Aranda, who's familiar with Jeff Lebby's offense from when he was at LSU and Lebby was at Ole Miss. I do think that, Texas Tech, they showed that they can shut down West Virginia's offense, who had just put 43 up on Baylor 9 days prior. And so the challenges are there. I mean, you have to go to Ames, you got to go to Morgantown, and you got to go to Lubbock. And then your 2 home games are against the 2 teams that played in the Big 12 championship game last year, Baylor and Oklahoma State. So it's a tough task, but I do see a 3-2, 4-1 finish. That's kind of where I would put Oklahoma. The ESPN Football Power Index, the matchup predictor, they only have Oklahoma projected to win one of their final 5 games, and that's against West Virginia. I think they're all winnable. I think you can beat Iowa State. It's one of those things where Iowa State's not going to outscore you because Hunter Deckers and that offense just isn't really capable of putting up 40, 50 points against you. And so if you're able to move the ball at all relatively well, even if you can get to 24 like Texas did, you're going to have a great chance to win that game. Against West Virginia, it's going to be, who knows what West Virginia team are we going to get? Are we going to get the team that put up 43 against Baylor or the team that only put up 10 against Tech? Against Baylor, I think that's going to be a tough test. Them and Oklahoma State to me are your 2 biggest challenges, but that doesn't mean that, Texas Tech isn't going to be a big challenge against Lubbock or out there in Lubbock either. So But yeah, I'm more of the optimistic mindset. I think what we saw from the Kansas game, being able to get some stops defensively, slow them down a little bit in the first half. I think that's going to translate, and we're going to see more of that this week against Iowa State, and then also against Baylor. Against Baylor, it's going to be, can they stop the run? Because that's been kind of the issue for Oklahoma for much of this year. And so all in all, I like Oklahoma to win at least 3 games, but I can't see them winning 4. If I was going to pick one that they'd lose, it'd be probably either Baylor or Oklahoma State at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to read these percentages that John Hoover put out there for handicapping Oklahoma's final 5 games, right? Win percentage, that this is just his individual personal, what he views the win percentage to be. Okay, let's throw that out there, and then you tell me whether or not you think I'm just absolutely crazy with something I'm about to say next, John. So at Iowa State, John Hoover has it as 60% likelihood that Oklahoma wins. Baylor, November 5th in Norman, he has it at 55% Oklahoma wins that game. 65% that Oklahoma wins in Morgantown versus West Virginia. He likes Oklahoma State to beat OU. He gives Oklahoma a 40% chance, so a little less than 50%. Not crazy, not a heavy lean in terms of Oklahoma State, but he is leaning that direction there. Texas Tech in the regular season finale. Oklahoma 55%, so pretty close to a coin flip. Okay. I think that 60% number is too low for this weekend's trip to Ames, Iowa. And a lot of the numbers out there, if you look at the BetOnline numbers and just whatever odds makers you're looking at, it's kind of in that field goal-ish range for Oklahoma, 4 points, field goal, somewhere right around there for OU. I just think this is such a great matchup for the Sooners, John. And really, maybe this is something we spiral into our next show, because to me, if Oklahoma can't find defensive success versus this Iowa State team, you bracket Xavier Hutchinson and you make everybody else beat you. And if you can't do that successfully, then okay, probably Oklahoma is going to have some serious pronounced problems defensively the rest of the way. But I just kind of have a sneaking suspicion that Oklahoma is about to roll in this game versus Iowa State, because I think the fact that, again, they're really good defensively, and that's Oklahoma's strength. It's good on good there. The fact that Iowa State's bad offensively, I think, sets up for the Sooners on the road to go find success. I would put the win percentage, to me, more like 3 times out of 4 Oklahoma goes up to Ames and wins this game. Again, am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. The one pause that I have with this one is that Hunter Deckers is a pretty good running quarterback. And that's been something that Oklahoma struggled with this year, whether it was Adrian Martinez or Max Duggan, or even against, I can't remember who it was, Colin Schlee or the UTEP quarterback that they struggled with a little bit in the running game. But they've had some struggles against more athletic running quarterbacks, and Hunter Deckers can put it on the ground and he can move. He's also shown the capability of throwing the football. Now, my hope is that against Kansas, we saw them improve a little bit against the quarterback run game. Can they carry that over through the bye week and show that they're even better this week? But I think you hit it right on the head. Like, okay, Oklahoma is really good offensively. Iowa State's really good defensively. That's going to be the key. Which one of those matchups is going to win? And then for Oklahoma's defense, I think they're just going to be better than Iowa State's offense. I think they're going to take that time to kind of regroup and take what was good against Kansas, build upon that to play really strong against an Iowa State team that, yes, has Xavier Hutchinson, but doesn't have much else beyond that. And so I think this is going to be a good kind of rallying point for this defense to just kind of spearhead them towards the end of the season and to really try to finish on a high note. And I think that they'll do that. And I mean, right now, I think it was like 2.5, 3 points Oklahoma's favored by. I think they cover that fairly easily. We'll get into that later in the week, but yeah, I'm really liking Oklahoma in this matchup this week. It should be I won't say it will be an easy game, but I'd have a hard time finding anybody picking against Oklahoma this week.
I feel like I do this every single week now, John, but I do a friendly tease for our next show. is this the game that tells you the direction the rest of Oklahoma's season is going to head? Right. I think that I probably said that going into the TCU game. I think I said it going into the Texas game. I know that I said it going into the Kansas game. So I don't know. Maybe that's just carve that segment out every single week. But I do think, again, we can have that kind of conversation coming out of the bye week for Iowa State.
Well, at least I'm not sitting here saying that Hunter Deckers can't run the football and setting Oklahoma up for the jinx, because that's burned us already this year. So, I think it's going to be huge. It's going to be key. But I think the mentality is right in what they're saying. The players are saying it's like we just got to take it one game. Like, all they're really doing right now is building towards the end of this season, trying to finish it on a strong note, on a favorable note, so that they can go into 2023 with some optimism and some positivity. You finish, these next 5 games, you go 1-4, or maybe even 2-3. 2-3 gets you a bowl game, but if you go 1-4, the final 5, I feel like that kind of leaves you, I don't know, not so sure about what 2023 is going to bring. But I think if you can go 2-3 or better, we're thinking 3-2, 4-1 is probably the floor for this team. Then you feel pretty decent. Yeah, 7-5 is not what you expected, not what you had hoped for in the 2022 season, but at least you have something like you can say, okay, that middle or that first stretch of Big 12 games was not good, but they really finished strong. Something to take into 2023 and run with. And I think that's kind of what you're hoping for. That, and then just figuring out who are going to be the key contributors. And that's, I feel like, something that we'll have to talk about as well, because I feel like there are several players, and I wrote about it over at Sooners Wire, several players that really need to stand out over the final 5 games for Oklahoma to feel really, really comfortable with their situation at different positions heading into 2023. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thank you so much for tuning in and subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're looking forward to this Iowa State game, and it's always great to have game week. We only get 5 more of these guaranteed this year, so let's enjoy every single one of them. We've loved talking Oklahoma football with you all season long. Basketball is getting ready to gear up too, so we'll start integrating that a little bit into the show, and then we'll have softball later in the spring. And man, it's going to be another fun year here on the Locked On Sooners podcast. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Now go check out the Locked On Sports Today show with Peter Bukowski for your second listen from the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. For Josh Helmer, I'm John Williams. We'll catch you next time. Boomer Sooner.